Welcome into the FanDuel Hurry Up. I am Sean Guasamacchia, joined now by Jim Sanas of FanDuel, and we are talking XFL Week 4. Jim, welcome back.
Thank you, Sean. I appreciate it. Pretty excited for this Week 4 slate. Got a couple of games that are intriguing at least. A couple of teams maybe able to buy low on. So pretty good spot this week. The slate's looking pretty solid. How are you doing today, Sean?
I'm doing fantastic, and I'm really looking forward to the Wildcats in person. I'll get a chance to see them here in New York. They play the New York Guardians last week, 39-9 thrashing at home in LA. Josh Johnson really got things going in his second week of action, but you don't have him as your quarterback for Saturday's games. You have Jordan Ta'amu, the St. Louis Battlehawks quarterback.
Yeah, I think that if you're playing things straight up, Josh Johnson is going to be the number one quarterback for this week. But as you mentioned, Josh Johnson lit things up last week. He was tremendous, which means that when people look at this Saturday-only slate, they're probably going to gravitate towards Josh Johnson. And, again, straight up, he is the better quarterback. But I think there is a good case to be made for Jordan Ta'amu as a tournament play because he is just $1 cheaper than Josh Johnson. People aren't going to go there for salary savings. And when you look at the distribution of fantasy points between Josh Johnson and Jordan Ta'amu, I think there is a pretty realistic scenario where Jordan Ta'amu is the highest scoring quarterback on the Saturday-only slate, largely because of his rushing. But the passing volume with St. Louis is never going to be all that high, but Ta'amu runs quite a bit. He is averaging 41 rushing yards per game. And basically what that says to me is he has a very good floor. That is awesome, but there's also a path to a ceiling game if he gets a rushing touchdown or two, and that's definitely intriguing when I know a guy's not going to be as popular as a counterpart on this slate. To me, there are only two viable quarterbacks on this Saturday-only slate. One of them is Johnson. One of them is Ta'amu. I expect Johnson to get the majority of the ownership, and I want to pivot to Ta'amu instead because of that rushing. St. Louis has a good implied team total. Neither game on the slate is expected to be all that high scoring, so I'm going to go with the less popular guy, go with Ta'amu, but I think that the Saturday-only slate really does revolve around just those two guys.
Yeah, and Jordan Ta'amu really doing well for the Battlehawks. One of the surprises through 3 weeks, it's early, Jim, but through the first 3 weeks, the Battlehawks have been one of the surprises in the XFL. Let's move to the running back position, a guy who was inactive last week for the Wildcats in that big win they had at home. Elijah Hood at running back. Why Elijah this week as your running back for Saturday?
Yeah, I think there's a decent amount of risk with Elijah Hood because of what you just mentioned. He missed last week due to injury, and that is concerning. But this week on the injury report, Elijah Hood's not there, which says to me that Elijah Hood is probably healthy and ready to go, which is encouraging. Martez Carter was the guy who started for Elijah Hood last week, and he is actually on the injury report. He missed practice both Tuesday and Wednesday. So if I had to make a guess here, I would bet that Elijah Hood comes back and plays the same role he had before. And the role before for Hood was pretty good. He had a 71% snap rate back in week number 1. He played 64% of the snaps in week number 2. So if we get Elijah Hood back in that same role, he's a pretty massive value at $13, and I am definitely intrigued by that. I think you can make a case for both of the St. Louis running backs in Christian Michael and Matt Jones. Matt Jones also banged up, missing some practice, but those guys split that backfield up, whereas Elijah Hood is kind of the lone ranger in the backfield here for Los Angeles. So it's definitely risky. If you want to go the safer route, I think that Christian Michael is probably the guy I would turn to there, but the upside in Hood is very good if he can get somewhere near what his role was before this injury. I think that with Martez Carter being bagged up, there's a good chance that happens. So I'm willing to roll the dice on Elijah Hood. I am pretty risk tolerant, though. So I think if you are a different type of DFS player and don't want to take that risk, maybe this isn't your guy. But for me, knowing the potential that Elijah Hood has, if he gets that roll back, I am willing to go here for just $13.
And the potential of this offense playing the New York Guardians, the Wildcats. We saw what Josh Johnson can do last week. If he continues that same play, Elijah Hood, a great play there at running back this week on Saturday. All right, let's move over to the wide receiver / tight end position. A guy many of us know playing quarterback at Navy, Keenan Reynolds, is now a wide receiver in the XFL, and he's coming on lately for the Seattle Dragons. You have him as your wide receiver / tight end this week?
Yeah, for me, it's really comes down to predictable volume because you could go to Los Angeles because Nelson Spruce, who's been a very high usage wide receiver this entire year, will not play. That opens up volume for Los Angeles. So I think there is a good case to be made for Adonis Jennings, possibly Jordan Elijah Smallwood. Trey McBride would be interesting, but he popped up on the injury report on Wednesday. So a little bit concerned there. There is a lot of value going at the LA guys, but we know Keenan Reynolds will get volume for Seattle. It's not going to be the most efficient volume by any means, but he'll get volume because over the first 3 games this year, Keenan Reynolds has 24% of the team's overall targets. He has 38% of the team's deep targets. And Brandon Silvers has been disappointing, but he has gone deep, which means that we do have some upside here with Keenan Reynolds. And I think that's definitely intriguing. So I think that if you want to shoot for the stars, aim for the fences and try to get a super high upside play, that's where you go with the LA guys. Specifically, Adonis Jennings, I think, is the most interesting one at $12. But if you want a safe guy will be out there, will run routes, and will get targets, that's Keenan Reynolds. So some good lower cost options on this slate, but I think that the one that I want to go to from a safety perspective and with a good chance at a good path to a ceiling, it's Keenan Reynolds for $16 in Seattle.
All right, let's move over to Sunday's slate. And a little bit of a surprise, you have Cardale Jones at your quarterback position over a guy like Phillip Walker, who for the Houston Roughnecks is taking the league by storm for the undefeated Houston Roughnecks. Even Landry Jones putting up some good numbers for the Dallas Renegades. Why are you going with Cardale Jones as your quarterback on Sunday this week?
It's the same thought process we use for Jordan Ta'amu because we know most of the popularity in this Sunday slate is going to be focused around PJ Walker and Landry Jones, and it should because the total in that game is 50.5. That is super high for an XFL game. It's about 6 points clear of every other game on this slate. You should want to go with that game, but Cardale Jones, I think, is also in a good buy low spot after a hideous outing in week number 3 where he threw 4 picks. He looked really bad. But we've also seen him hit the highs, and it's fun to use guys who are going to be less popular who have the ability to have a ceiling game. We know that Cardale Jones can do that. He is facing the Tampa Bay Vipers. They rank 6th in coverage grade according to Pro Football Focus, so not a great secondary. We saw PJ Walker kind of put it to him last week. Cardale Jones is a 33% deep rate, and he has also run 16 times this year. In 3 games, that's not bad. PJ Walker is at 12 rush attempts, so some juice there for Cardale Jones. I am very okay with PJ Walker. I am very okay with Landry Jones as well, but PJ Walker is also $4 more than Cardale Jones. If you want to get to Cam Phillips, who is, I think, the best play on this slate, he's $22, and it's hard to get there if you use PJ Walker and stack that up. Cardale Jones, a little bit cheaper. It makes it a lot more realistic to get to Cam Phillips. I like that a lot. I like the bounce back here for Cardale Jones against a weak defense, so it may be tough after the brutal game logs you're going to see from week number 3, but I do still think that Cardale Jones has a lot of appeal at what should be lower popularity this weekend.
All right, so expect a bounce-back performance from Cardale Jones as the DC Defenders take on the Tampa Bay Vipers on Sunday. Running back, Cameron Artis-Payne, and he's been doing it not only rushing, but also catching the ball out of the backfield for the Dallas Renegades. You're going with Cameron Artis-Payne as your running back for this Sunday.
Yeah, and honestly, if I could just go like Cameron Artis-Payne or Lance Dunbar and just say, use a Dallas running back, I don't care which one, I would do that because they're both really appealing. If you look at running back snap rates from week number 3, Dallas had 2 of the 4 highest snap rates among running backs. Lance Dunbar played 61% of the snaps. Cameron Artis-Payne was the highest snap rate running back on the entire slate. That's why I'm going to go here with Cameron Artis-Payne, but I think that Dunbar at $16 is also very much in play as well. Dunbar last week, or Artis-Payne last week, had 13 carries. He also had 6 targets, and he ran more routes than Lance Dunbar. So Dunbar's going to get the attention. That's deserved. And I like Lance Dunbar, but Artis-Payne has a really tremendous role. And I think that you could make the case that he has the best role of any running back in the entire XFL. He'll get passing down work. He'll get early down work. He'll get chances at touchdowns because that team is good in what projects to be a super high scoring game. Cameron Artis-Payne checks all the boxes. Now, I don't think it's entirely outrageous to consider using both Cameron Artis-Payne and Lance Dunbar in the same lineup, as weird and as unnatural as that may feel. I think that it is at least in play. But if I had to pick one of those 2 guys, I would go Cameron Artis-Payne. James Butler is also intriguing. on the other side of this game at $17. But I think my favorite running back on this Sunday only slate is Cameron Artis-Payne. But just broadly, use those Dallas running backs for sure.
We mentioned the Houston Roughnecks. We mentioned the offense and PJ Phillip Walker there at the quarterback position, lighting things up in the XFL. His number one target, Cam Phillips. But you have a guy who maybe under the radar, not maybe a little bit here at $16. He's priced Khalil Lewis. You're going with Khalil Lewis as your wide receiver on Sunday.
Yeah, I think we'd all love to have PJ Walker stacked with Cam Phillips in every lineup we could get. But PJ Walker is $23, Cam Phillips is $22, and that's pretty tough to get to. So if you want to use PJ Walker, I'm okay jumping down to Khalil Lewis at $16. That's pretty cheap to get exposure to this high-flying offense. In the first 3 games, Khalil Lewis has actually had a pretty good role. He has 21% of the overall targets in that time. He does not have as much deep work as Cam Phillips. So if you can get to Phillips, I would be trying to do so for sure. But Lewis has a decent role, and he's playing on a good team. And that's what we should look for if we're trying to find running backs with a path to a big game. So I like Khalil Lewis a lot from that perspective if you can't find the salary to get up to Cam Phillips. I think that Eli Rogers is also in play here. He is $15. He's had a really good role for DC so far this year. So I do like that. Some cheaper options at wide receiver. So maybe your ability to get to PJ Walker is a little bit easier than may have thought initially. But I do like kind of a balanced build here this week, getting a guy like Cardale, getting someone like Cameron Artis-Payne, and then plugging these like middle range wide receivers like Khalil Lewis and Eli Rogers. I think that's a pretty good strategy for this weekend. And Khalil Lewis has a good enough role on a great offense where I think that he can help make up for the disappointment in not being able to afford Cam Phillips.
Yeah, that June Jones-led Houston Roughnecks offense putting up tremendous amount of yards and winning 3-0, the only undefeated team left in the XFL. Week 4 starts on Saturday with 2 games, another 2 on Sunday. Should be a lot of fun. Jim Sanas of FanDuel, thanks for the time and the knowledge. We're looking forward to another week in the XFL.
Thank you, Shaun. I appreciate it. Good luck to you, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Thank you, Jim. That is Jim Sanas of FanDuel. I am Shaun Guasamakia. That is the FanDuel Hurry Up.